Hey Rupert, my name is Alex Zeltcer. I'm CEO and co-founder of nSure.ai. nSure is nSure.ai. Happy to be here and chat a little bit about crypto and payments.
What was the initial vision behind founding nSure.ai, and how does that vision evolve over time?
So our previous company was a marketplace for gift cards. And gift cards are extremely difficult to sell online because of payment fraud. We've encountered significant amounts of scalable, what we call scalable payment fraud, as early as 2013 and 14. Looked for whatever was available on the market at that point to prevent payment fraud. Couldn't find anything that was strong enough for our vertical. Decided to invest heavily internally in that, built a team, tested it out against the strongest tools around, realized that it's an order of magnitude better in our vertical, and decided to spin it out and start a company around that. So we actually brought external investors, acquired the team and the technology, and started nSure based on that, in order to help other companies struggling with the same problem. We actually started with payment fraud only in prepaid, on gift cards, prepaid debit cards, etc., because that's where our core expertise started. And from the get-go, our vision was to extend to any vertical that has the same type of problem, where the goods are digital, the assets are digital, and can be resold online. That's what creates the attractiveness for fraudsters. And you go a little bit more deeper into that, and that's how we've evolved the vision. So we started the company in 2019, and when COVID hit, we continued on to our next vertical beyond prepaid, which was gaming. Social gaming was booming during COVID, as you can probably remember. And we started that vertical then, and immediately after that, we started our first foray into crypto with an exchange, with a European exchange, and found that the fraud there is as scalable as we've seen elsewhere. And for now, we're really dedicating our resources for these three verticals. So crypto, NFT, marketplaces on gaming, and virtual swords, skins, etc., and prepaid devices.
How does nSure.ai leverage AI to enhance fraud prevention and in the cryptocurrency space?
So what we've identified is that in these type of verticals, in the realm of digital assets, the main fraud is what we call scalable fraud. It's happening by fraudsters who do this as a business. It's not a one-off. It's not a person sitting at a coffee shop with a hoodie and typing. It's really a machine that is attacking. The reason for that is that it's extremely attractive for them to try and penetrate these type of establishments, and I'll explain a little bit why. If you think about it, first of all, payment fraud in general is what happens when people use your credit card information or pay card information or bank account to steal goods, right, online. And from a consumer perspective, you're always protected. So if someone stole your credit card information, you see a line on your credit card statement you don't recognize, you give your issuer a call, you tell them, hey guys, I didn't do that, and you'll get your funds back. What you don't know, and normally don't really care, is who paid for it. And the reality is that if this was a brick and mortar, a standard physical purchase, then it's the banks, it's really the issuer that's going to fund that loss. If that was done online, anything that is defined as a card not present transaction, it'll actually be the merchant issue. So if someone used your credit card information to steal a pair of Nikes, it'll be to steal a pair of Nikes at a Nike store. It'll be the issuer's problem. The banks would solve it. If they did that online on Nike.com, it'll be a Nike.com problem. And we normally are not aware of that, but that's the reality. And what happens is that immediately as e-commerce was created in the early 90s, a whole industry was spun out because they had to have help taking decisions on whether to accept or reject transactions. It's unlike in the physical world, if a card is swiped and it's processed and it's approved, you know you're going to get the funds, you can release the product. Online, that's not the case. You swipe the card, it's processed, you release the product, 3 days later or a month later, you could get a charge back saying, hey guys, sorry, we're taking the funds back. So they had to have some help with that, and that's how the industry was created. However, most of the tools were created for that, specifically for e-commerce. And in e-commerce, the main difference between what happens in e-commerce and what happens in crypto, for instance, is the immediacy of the delivery and the liquidity of the assets sold. And if you think about it from a risk perspective, it is very different. So if you're a Nike and someone came on your site and pressed the button and said, yeah, I want to get these pair of sneakers, and you accept the transaction, you can reassess the risk anytime until the driver leaves the shoes at the door. Because if you reassess just before they leave and say, hey, no, don't leave the shoes, it's a fraudulent transaction, you as Nike, you didn't lose anything, except maybe for the logistics, you didn't lose the product. And a lot happens during that time. Usually it's at least a few hours, sometimes it will a couple of days. People today get text messages for transactions done online. They can say, no, I didn't buy a pair of shoes now, and obviously the transaction will get declined. So a lot happens within that period of delivery that reduces the risk dramatically. In crypto, you press the button, so they want to get that Bitcoin, card is processed, the Bitcoin goes into your wallet, it's done. There's no taking it back. So you cannot reassess the risk. It's a very different risk profile. That's one element. The other is even worse from a crypto perspective. It's the fact that because it's both immediate and liquid, fraudsters are attracted to it. The fraudsters that are attracted to it do it as a business. So if we simplify the world and say that there are two types of fraudsters, the ones that are out there to get their shoes on a pair of sneakers is one, and the other ones that are doing it as a business is the other. The guys that are doing it as a business, they are attracted to industries where the goods are delivered immediately because it allows them to perpetrate fraud at scale. You think about it from their perspective, a fraudster that is in that payment fraud domain, what he does is it's very simple. He goes on the dark net, he buys a list of stolen financials, an Excel file with 1,000 rows. Each row is a credit card or a PayPal. He pays per row, so he pays $25, $30 per card. Now he needs to turn that into more cash, right? He just spent $20,000. He needs his positive return on investment. How do you do that when you have credit cards? You buy things, you resell them. Now imagine the difference between buying and reselling 1,000 Nike sneakers and buying and reselling crypto or a prepaid debit card by Visa, right? It's not the same operational element for the fraudsters, which is why they're attracted, and they create what we call scalable fraud. So they create machines that would attack these type of sites, and it may look like a wave of seemingly legitimate individuals, but in reality it's a machine that is doing whatever it can to disguise the identities of each of these users that are really machines. And what we do that is very different than the rest of the industry is we're not trying to identify one transaction at a time. We're really looking for grouping these transactions, identifying these fraud patterns, which if you think about it is very similar to what cyber companies do when they try to identify DDoS. This would be to denial of service. It's basically a very similar concept.
What are the main challenges the crypto industry faces regarding fraud, and how does nSure.ai address the challenges?
So what we believe and what we've seen with our clients is that onboarding the mass market today is extremely painful because of the friction. If you think about what's required, if you're a crypto enthusiast, then you'd go through all the hoops and loops, and you're probably already part of the community. You have a wallet or several wallets. It's all good. If you're new to the world of crypto, and someone like myself or yourself would recommend that you take a look at that, you'd go and try to get on right to whatever, Coinbase, Kraken, wherever you want to go. You try to create a wallet, you try to get through your first transaction. It's going to take you hours. Yeah, you go through one or more KYC sessions where you need to take your picture, a video, answer questions from a person that would call you, all these hoops and loops, and it's crazy. It's very, very difficult, and the reason this is done is because people believe that KYC helps in preventing fraud. The reality is, we think that it's done because of regulation, but the reality is the regulators don't require you to go through KYC unless you go above a certain threshold from a volume perspective. For instance, in the US, if you don't go above $3,000, there's no requirement for KYC from the regulator. However, even if you're buying $1 worth of Bitcoin, they're going to get you through KYC, which is insane. There's no reason for people to do that. And that level of friction, we see it eliminate 50% of the population. And if you could only invoke KYC where it's required by regulation, you'd find that you are able to approve 40, 50, 60% more new individuals into the crypto world than you can today. And what we do is we help substitute KYC, if you could say that, for the fraud prevention reasons. We cannot substitute KYC, but it's required by regulation, because when it's required, it's required. And we cannot substitute the money laundering aspect, right? Because that's where KYC is very strong. You get the credentials, you can follow the transaction, the authorities and get that information. It's all good. If it's a very small transaction, there's no reason for that, but when it doesn't require it, you should do something different. And that's where we come in. So we believe that reducing that level of friction is extremely important for the crypto community in general, to get a bigger percentage of the mass market to go on chain. Now you should ask me how we do that.
How do you do that?
There we go. So the reality is the following. First, identity verification. KYC is basically identity verification, right? And the common sense behind it is that if you make sure that the person behind the transaction is the rightful owner of the payment instrument, you should be safe. Which is true, right? If you verify that the person behind that card is the actual owner of the card, or behind the bank account is the actual owner of the bank account, you're safe. So identity verification became at least the go-to from a philosophy perspective. People say if you want to avoid fraud, do identity verification. It fails completely in the realms of digital goods, and I'll explain a little bit about why that is, and then I'll touch specifically on crypto and what we need to do instead. So let's assume that you're using an email address as part of the identity verification process. And let's say that you're the consumer that is at hand, and you're transacting on Coinbase, you're playing games on Steam, and you're shopping on Best Buy. So when you're shopping on Best Buy, your email address is probably firstname.lastname@gmail.com. When you're on Steam playing games, it's probably fastship777, right? Or something like that. It's definitely not your name. When you're transacting on Coinbase, the email address you provide doesn't include neither your first name nor your last name, at least in general. And then you come in with a device that has been fingerprinted by someone that knows the population, knows everybody, all the consumers in the US. You might get declined in crypto because they expect to see first name dot last name at gmail.com, and you provide a different email. So they say, no, we expect to see that. We see something else. It's a higher risk. Let's decline it. And it doesn't hurt it. It simply creates what we call false positives. It rejects a good individual for no reason. And KYC is even worse because the friction is very high. And from what we've seen in crypto, 77% of payment fraud comes from fully verified accounts. And what we saw is that the fraudsters are becoming more and more sophisticated. We see generative AI being used for social engineering to get people to create an account, go through KYC, and then send it to someone. Not that someone comes in, puts in a stolen credit card, and rips the exchange off. Going through, and from the exchange perspective, everything was fine because they did KYC. It just doesn't work. The question is, what do you do instead? And what we found is, in order to identify most of the fraud, you need to look for the scale of the fraud. You need to look for the groups of people, not one by one, but try to identify the groups. We employ significant amounts of behavior analytics in AI to identify that. I'll give you a simple example. Let's say you go on Coinbase, and at some point after the funnel, you need to decide what you want to invest in. There's Bitcoin, there's Ethereum, there's a bunch of others. And it takes you 12 seconds to hesitate. You hesitate for 12 seconds, and you select Ethereum. Okay. Not a lot that we can do about that specific transaction. But if a second later, someone else comes in, and they hesitate for 12 seconds as well, we can raise an eyebrow. And if 30 seconds later there are 50 people that came in hesitating for exactly 12 seconds, you can say, okay, we should treat these guys as a group and figure out whether they're, as a group, they're fraudulent. And doing that is extremely different than trying to go behind every transaction and figure out whether the identity is correct or not. It has nothing to do with it. It's grouping them together, figuring out it's a pattern, deciding whether that's fraud or not. And that is extremely different. That's our philosophy from the get-go. And that is been proven extremely efficient in crypto.
What technological innovations do you foresee playing a significant role in the future of fraud prevention in digital commerce?
So I'll give you a couple of examples. We have a patent that was just granted that allows us to reduce fraud pressure. When I say fraud pressure, what do I mean? One of the problems we have with crypto and in similar industries is that really there is a significant percentage of the people trying to come in that are fraudsters. It's smaller than the community believes. The community believes there are 30-40% of the transactions are fraud. The reality is somewhere near 5%, but 5% is still very high. And one of the only ways to allow for a higher approval rate at the end of the day is to reduce that fraud pressure. And if you want to reduce that fraud pressure, the only thing that works from our experience is to deter the fraudsters. Find ways to make them think twice before they attack. The way to do that is to inflict pain. And what we've done and what we have patented technology for is what we call sting back. If we find someone that we are 99.99% sure he's a fraudster, instead of just declining him and for a fraudster, by the way, to get declined is nothing. He takes the card, goes somewhere else and tries again. Nothing happened. What we would do is we would find ways to burn the payment instrument that he used. We would burn the card. He would think that he's gone through the transaction. He would think that everything's fine. And when he tries to use the card again, he will find that the card is blocked and he didn't receive anything. So he'll think everything's okay. We won't release a product. We want to let him have. We won't transfer the Bitcoin into his wallet, and we will burn the card. And why is that painful for them? Because you remember, these fraudsters, they just paid for that list $30 to $50 per line, and we just burned $30 through it. And if he did that at scale, and he figures that out after 100 cards, we burned $3,000, and they simply know what it's like. So we believe that this psychology of how to deal with fraudsters, which the Stingback is an example of, is what we would see more and more, and we would see generative AI being used against them in the same manner that they're using it today against us, so that we can convince them of things that have happened that really didn't, and lure them in, create honeypotting, create these type of Stingback technologies that would eventually allow us to create a safer environment for everyone, because they'll go do their fraud somewhere else.
For the next set of questions, I'm going to keep it more general, but you could feel free to bring it back to nSure.ai how you see fit. Can you share your perspective on the most significant developments in the blockchain space over the past year?
Oh, wow. So I don't know. I think that, if you look at blockchain, the technology is important, but more important is the mass market adoption, in my opinion. If you look at that, I think the ETFs have created the biggest impact. They were expected to, and to be honest, I don't think we expected them to be approved so fast. They were, both for Bitcoin and eventually for Ether as well. So I think if you look at what is the most significant impact that we've seen in the last year, it's probably that. And nothing on the technology is even close to creating that level of an impact, in my opinion.
How do you see the role of traditional finance institutions evolving with the rise of decentralized finance and blockchain technologies?
That's a good question. I think that we've debated that a little bit. I think that one of the things that are the premise of decentralized and of the blockchain in general is to create an environment where there's no corruption, where there's trust, right? By the transparency. Like you create transparency, you create trust. And I think that what we're seeing, my opinion, and a lot of crypto aficionados are going to kill me for saying that. My opinion is that when it gets big enough and the interests are strong and large enough financially, it would create the same types of behavior we see on the financial markets today. It's a very, very delicate balance, in my opinion, before we see the same type of behaviors created. And in my view, there's no avoiding it. I think it's human nature. It'll get to a position where no matter how we structure it, some things can work decentralized, some things would require some kind of an entity. And at the end of the day, if we manage that balance well, and we create something that is slightly less controllable, slightly less interest-driven than the old financial industry, then we've done something good. I think that the utopia, of everything's decentralized, everything is public, everything is open, is a utopia. It's impossible to achieve. Again, my view personally.
What do you see as the biggest challenge facing the adoption of blockchain technology, and how do you think the industry can come up with that?
So I'm taking it back to to where we fit. I strongly believe that the biggest challenge is onboarding the mass. Onboarding the mass. Today it's a niche, right? We have a lot of people. It's grown significantly. We're in the bull market. Everybody is smiling again. It's not winter, right? The winter is gone, right? Hopefully it's not coming anytime soon. But I think still the real issue is that it's still a niche. It's a very small percentage of the population that is really exposed and is willing to participate. And I think that until we find a way to onboard the mass market without friction, we won't see it grow at another step function. We may see it grow, step by step, but we won't see the exponential explosions we've seen today. And that's why I believe that we're positioned right at the right spot from a process perspective to help achieve it.
How do you envision the future of Web3, and what impact do you think will have on the internet as we know it today?
Again, a big question, right? So I don't know, if Web3, if the reality or everything we envision on augmented reality or virtual reality is going to be, the main thing in Web3, or if the financial elements of it are going to be that. I honestly don't know. I believe that it takes us, the difference we saw between Web 1 and Web 2, right, when people were able to contribute content on their own and create that, I think that was a significant step forward, and we saw a leap. I think we'll see a similar leap with Web 3, as the technology enables it. What would be the application that creates that? Is it a Facebook like that did it for Web 2, or is it something else? I honestly don't know. I have my opinions, but I don't know. I believe that the virtual world we're seeing and the impact of being able to see live concerts, in that environment, etc., has significant appeal. I think that the younger generation, we need to see the younger generation get, the kids of today get at least 10 years older, maybe 20 years older, before that becomes a mass market. So I don't think that we'll see Web3 in that domain picking up in the next 5 years, as some people do. But if I look, a decade or 2 decades in the future, I can see that happen. I can see the changes in perspective. I can tell you why personally. I'm 53. I'm very old for the industry. There's no way I'm watching a concert being streamed. Right? I'm gonna buy tickets and go to the live concert. My kids, I can see them do that. Their kids, they may never go to a live event.
I hope that's not the case.
That's exactly right. So, but that could happen. Right? That could happen. So that's, I think that the timeline and it's much longer than we expect, and it usually is. But I think we'll see something like that in what we don't say.
What advice would you give to new entrepreneurs in the cryptocurrency or blockchain space?
So I've spoken to a lot of the entrepreneurs. Find the real value you create. Don't create a project because it's because it sounds neat. We're seeing too many projects, in my opinion. Too many projects that have no legs, zero. They sound very interesting. They're very nice to solve. There's a problem but the problem doesn't connect to any real problem anyone has. And we're still seeing too much of that. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because eventually out of 1,000 projects there'll be one that is good. But I think that my main advice is figure out what's the real value, what's the real problem you're solving, what's the real live problem you're solving. not not something that you imagined as a problem, something you know is a problem. You can verify that, and then go do your protocol around that. Don't just be don't fall in love with your own idea.